I am Eleanor. I am 72 years old. Today, I carry with me a secret that has weighed on my heart for more than half a century. A story of a love that was forbidden by faith and a priest's iron decree. 50 years ago, I was a young woman filled with hope and dreams as bright as the morning sun breaking over our small village. Those dreams were fragile and beautiful, like delicate blossoms in early spring. But they were crushed beneath the heavy hand of a man clothed not only in robes, but in authority that felt absolute. His word was law, and his judgment fell upon me and the man I loved, Thomas, with the cold finality of winter's frost. I never imagined that my story would stretch so far across time, that the echoes of that love would linger quietly, hiding in the shadows of years and silence, waiting to be found again. I lived for decades with a wound too deep for many to see, carrying memories like faded photographs tucked away in a drawer, their edges curled, but their images still vivid in my mind. If you are listening, I want you to know that this is not just a tale of loss and sorrow, but also one of resilience, the kind that grows slowly like ivy climbing an ancient stone wall, stubborn and quietly beautiful. It is a story of how love, even when buried beneath layers of fear, tradition, and distance, has a way of finding its way back, brought forth by the laughter and curiosity of the grandchildren who never knew of the pain it once caused. My grandchildren, with their boundless energy and questions, are the gentle hands that have unraveled the threads of my past, bringing me face to face with the boy I once knew and the man I never thought I would see again. In telling this story, I am not just revisiting the past, but breathing life into a truth that time tried to bury. The village I grew up in was small, nestled between rolling hills and thick forests, where everyone knew your name and your business. The church towered over the town square like a silent sentinel, its bells marking the passage of hours, the rhythm of life governed by faith and tradition. Father Dominic, the priest who held sway over our souls, was a figure both revered and feared, his voice carrying the weight of divine authority. He was a man who could command a room with a glance, and whose word could make or break futures. When Thomas and I declared our intention to marry, it was not merely a promise between two people, but a defiance of the expectations that Father Dominic and the village held for me. His refusal was not a simple no. It was a sentence, a barrier built of whispers and judgment that cast a shadow over my youth and shaped the course of my life. For years, I bore the weight of that decree, folding it into my days like a secret prayer, hiding the ache beneath the surface, smiles, and quiet obedience. Yet, even in the darkest moments, a flicker of hope remained. It is strange to think how the years have softened the edges of that pain, transforming it from a sharp wound to a distant scar. But the scar remains, a reminder of what was lost and what was never truly forgotten. And now, as I look into the eyes of my grandchildren, I see the light of that love reflected back at me, a reminder that even in the shadows, love endures and sometimes finds a way to bloom anew. I was 22, a young woman shaped by the quiet rhythms of a small village where tradition held sway over every corner of life, as unyielding as the ancient oak that stood sentinel outside the churchyard. The church was the pulse of our community, its steeple rising like a beacon over our lives, and Father Dominic was the shepherd entrusted with guiding our souls through the winding paths of faith and obedience. He was a stern man, his voice carrying the weight of generations, commanding respect not just through his words, but through an authority so deeply woven into the fabric of our lives that questioning him felt like challenging the very heavens. I never imagined, not in my wildest hopes, that the man who wore the cloth of God would be the one to determine the fate of my heart, deciding who I could love and who I must forget. It was during a summer swollen with the scent of wildflowers and fresh hay that I met Thomas. He was unlike anyone I had ever known, gentle in his manner, with eyes that held the calm of still waters and a kindness that seemed almost too tender for the harshness of our world. We found each other amidst the simplicity of village life, where smiles and shared glances were the currency of connection. Thomas had a quiet strength, the kind that does not roar but endures, like the steady flame of a candle in the darkest night. Together, we dared to dream. Our dreams were woven from threads of hope and whispered promises beneath the endless blue sky, a future where love could bloom freely, unburdened by the chains of judgment or fear. But those dreams were fragile, delicate as the petals of the wild roses that clung to the garden fences. I recall the afternoons we spent wandering through meadows, hands intertwined, speaking softly of a life beyond the fields and the church bells, of a home filled with laughter and children's footsteps echoing through sunlit rooms. It was a future I cradled close to my heart, a secret treasure hidden beneath the weight of expectation. The village was small, its gaze sharp and unforgiving, with whispers like the rustle of dry leaves carried on the wind. Everyone knew our names, our histories, and soon enough, our hopes. Yet in that closeness, the space to dream without fear was painfully thin. Father Dominic was a looming presence in all of it, his approval the key to acceptance, his disapproval a shadow that could darken even the brightest days. I remember the way he looked at Thomas the first time they met, his eyes cool and unreadable, like a storm gathering beyond the horizon. The conversation was brief, clipped, but the message clear. Thomas was not a man of standing, not worthy of the daughter of a devout family. The seed of doubt was planted, and from it grew a wall between our love and the life we wished for. Yet, in those early days, before the cold winds of reality blew in, we clung to each other with a fierce determination, the kind that blossoms in the hearts of the young and the hopeful. I was a girl full of dreams and a stubborn heart, believing that love might be the force strong enough to break through even the oldest traditions. Little did I know that the path ahead would be lined with thorns, and that the man who claimed to speak for God would become the greatest obstacle to the future I dared to imagine. We announced our intention to marry, hearts soaring with hope and the promise of a future painted in the brightest colours of love. But the moment was shattered by Father Dominic's forbidding voice, heavy with authority and finality. "Not now," he said, his tone as cold and unyielding as the stone walls of the church. "Perhaps never." His reasons were shrouded in shadows, wrapped in vague warnings about family honour, social standing, and the inscrutable will of God, leaving us grasping at meaning in a silence that spoke louder than any sermon. I remember the weight of those words pressing down on me like a suffocating fog, the way they turned the air in our small village brittle and sharp, slicing through our joy with invisible blades. It was not just a rejection of our union, but a decree that rippled through the community like a chilling wind, carrying with it whispers and sideways glances that stung more deeply than any spoken insult. Our love, once a secret sanctuary where hope blossomed, quickly became the subject of hushed conversations behind closed doors and wary stares in the marketplace. The villagers, bound tightly by the church's influence and Father Dominic's commanding presence, absorbed his verdict and made it their own. The once warm greetings from neighbours grew distant, and invitations faded away, as if a silent wall had been erected between us and the world we thought we belonged to. I recall the nights when Thomas and I would sit in the quiet of the fields, the moon casting pale light over our entwined hands, as we tried to hold on to the fragile threads of our dream while the village turned its back on us. The coldness that crept into our world was not just the chill of autumn evenings, but a creeping frost that settled into the hearts of those around us. It was in the avoidance of our eyes, the stiff nods that replaced smiles, and the way gossip turned our love story into a scandal whispered with pity and judgment. I could feel the walls closing in, the weight of expectation and fear pressing down on my young shoulders, until I wondered if love was enough to break the chains of tradition and authority that bound me. Father Dominic's decree was more than a denial. It was a sentence pronounced from a pulpit where compassion was eclipsed by control, a reminder that in our village, and perhaps in the wider world, love was often subordinate to power and pedigree. The agony of those days was not only in the public rejection, but in the silent questioning that gnawed at my soul. Had I been foolish to believe that two hearts could defy the rules laid down by generations before us? I watched as Thomas's gentle spirit flickered beneath the weight of a future barred to us, and in those moments I felt the cruel irony of a love so pure being deemed unworthy. Yet even as the village turned away, and Father Dominic's shadow darkened our lives, a stubborn flame burned inside me. A quiet rebellion whispered in stolen moments and secret letters. Our love was forbidden, yes, but it was real and fierce, a wildflower pushing defiantly through cracks in cold stone. I clung to that hope, uncertain of what the future held, but certain that no priest's words could extinguish the truth of my heart. I struggled endlessly between the fierce beating of my heart and the heavy weight of my faith, a tug of war that left me raw and fractured, like a fragile boat caught in a stormy sea, tossed by waves of duty and desire. Father Dominic's word was absolute law, spoken with the authority of centuries behind it, and in our small village, to challenge that word was to risk everything. My family, bound by generations of loyalty to the church, became both my refuge and my prison, pressing me into silence with their expectant eyes and whispered warnings, their love tinged with disappointment and fear. I was torn between two worlds, one where obedience meant safety, but endless sorrow, and another where defiance could mean freedom but exile and ruin. Thomas, with his gentle voice and desperate eyes, begged me to run away with him, to leave behind the cold judgment of the village and the unyielding power of the priest. But fear wrapped around me like iron chains, tightening with every thought of what we might lose. The faces of my parents, the familiar streets of my home, the life I had always known. I remember the nights when I would lie awake in the darkness, the silence broken only by the soft rustling of leaves outside my window, wrestling with the impossible choice before me. I turned to prayer, seeking comfort in the arms of a God who seemed distant and silent, as if my cries were swallowed by an indifferent sky. My prayers were like fragile candles flickering against the darkness, moments of light that barely held back the overwhelming shadow of despair. I questioned everything, the teachings I had grown up with, the unquestioned authority of the priest, the path I was told to follow. Was faith truly about submission, about burying the deepest parts of oneself to please others? Or was it something more, a source of strength that could guide me through the storm? Yet, in the cold light of dawn, the weight of obedience pressed down again, reminding me of my place and the price of rebellion. The village's gaze was relentless, the whispers sharp as thorns, and I felt the walls closing in, suffocating the dreams I dared to hold. Thomas's absence grew like a wound, each day without him a painful reminder of the life I had surrendered. I often wondered if he understood the battle raging inside me, if he knew how much I longed to be free, but was chained by duty and fear. The choice was agonizing, a cruel paradox where neither path promised peace, only different kinds of pain. I tried to find solace in small acts, helping my mother in the garden, attending church services with a heavy heart, burying my dreams beneath layers of obedience. But beneath the surface, a quiet rebellion stirred, a seed of hope that one day I might reclaim the life and love taken from me. The memory of Thomas, his steady hand in mine, and the laughter we shared in stolen moments became a lifeline, a reminder that even in silence, love endures. I clung to that memory like a lifebuoy in a vast ocean, holding on against the tides of duty and despair. In those dark days, faith was both my anchor and my tormentor, a paradox that taught me the complexity of love and obedience. I learned that sometimes the greatest battles are fought within, between what the heart desires and what the world demands. And in that struggle, I found the fragile strength to endure, to wait for a time when courage would outweigh fear, and love could finally be free. One winter's evening, when the air was sharp with cold and the sky was a dark, unyielding blanket of stars, Father Dominic confronted me in the dimly lit parlour of my family's home. His voice was cold and unwavering, cutting through the stillness like ice, carrying the weight of final judgment without a hint of compassion. "Your duty is to God and family, not to a man who cannot provide," he declared, with a certainty that left no room for argument or hope. Those words shattered something fragile inside me, like a glass vessel dropped onto unforgiving stone, scattering shards of dreams and promises that I had carefully nurtured. I stood there, numb and trembling, as the echo of his decree settled deep into my bones, making the room feel colder than the winter night itself. That night, wrapped in the solitude of my chamber, I cried, tears that were not just for the present pain, but for the girl I once was, so full of hope and defiance, and for the woman I feared I was becoming, moulded by resignation and silent sorrow. I mourned the loss of a future imagined in soft whispers beneath a canopy of stars, the laughter shared with Thomas, and the quiet moments where love felt like a sanctuary from the harshness of the world. The fire in the hearth flickered, casting restless shadows on the walls, mirroring the turmoil that churned within me. Thomas left town soon after that dreadful confrontation, his departure as silent and cold as the snow that blanketed the fields outside. The letters that once carried promises and tender words ceased abruptly, leaving a void that echoed with the silence of broken vows and abandoned dreams. With his absence, so too disappeared the future we had dared to build together, and with it, my hope for a life lived on my own terms. I found myself trapped in a world where obedience was praised and love was a dangerous rebellion, where the priest's word was the final truth and my own desires were dismissed as foolish fantasies. The village continued its quiet life, unaware of the heartbreak hidden behind my composed smile, and I learned to carry the weight of my loss in solitude. Yet, even as the seasons changed and the years passed, the ache of what was stolen from me lingered like a ghost, haunting the corners of my heart that no duty or faith could fully heal. I realized that the pain of that winter's night was not only in the loss of Thomas, but in the surrender of a part of myself, the part that dared to dream, to love freely, and to choose my own path. It was a breaking point from which I would carry the scars for the rest of my life, a silent testament to the cost of obedience and the resilience of a heart that refused to forget. In those long, lonely nights, I clung to memories like a lifeline. The warmth of Thomas's smile and the softness of his voice, a distant flame that flickered stubbornly against the encroaching cold. That flame, though dimmed, never fully extinguished, a reminder that even in the darkest winters, the promise of spring remains. I married another, a man chosen by my family, a solid man with steady hands and a quiet demeanor, who offered the promise of security in a world that demanded conformity. Our wedding was a simple affair, held beneath the familiar arches of the village church, its walls heavy with the weight of tradition and the expectations that had shaped my life from childhood. The years that followed slipped by in a gentle rhythm of routine, mornings filled with the soft sounds of children waking, the steady clatter of breakfast dishes, and the steady thrum of daily chores that tethered me to a life of quiet duty. I bore children who grew like wildflowers in a sunlit meadow, their laughter a balm that soothed some of the ache nestled deep inside me. Yet, no matter how full my days were with family and responsibilities, a part of me remained locked away in a secret chamber, tucked far beneath the surface, where memories of Thomas still stirred like a distant melody carried on the wind. I buried those memories beneath layers of duty and expectation, folding them into the fabric of my life as carefully as one tucks away a fragile keepsake, precious, but hidden from view. Sometimes, in the stillness of the night, when the house was wrapped in silence and the world outside softened to a gentle hum, his name would slip from my lips like a whispered prayer, a secret breath of air carrying the weight of longing and loss. Those moments were fleeting, fragile as frost on a window pane, vanishing with the first light of dawn. Yet they were a reminder that the past, no matter how deeply buried, never truly fades. My husband, a kind man who never asked for the parts of me I kept locked away, offered stability and companionship, but he could not fill the spaces left by a love that had been forbidden and lost. The village around us continued unchanged, its customs and beliefs weaving around me like a familiar cloak, sometimes comforting, sometimes stifling. I played the role expected of me, a devoted wife, a loving mother, a faithful daughter of the church, while carrying the silent burden of dreams deferred. The church bells marked the passage of time, their tolls a steady reminder of the life I had chosen, or perhaps the life chosen for me. I attended Sunday services with practiced reverence, offered prayers with a voice steady but heart divided, and smiled through conversations where others praised the strength found in obedience and sacrifice. Yet beneath that composed exterior, I grappled with a quiet ache that sometimes bloomed into restless nights and tearful mornings. The weight of a life half-lived pressed on me like the heavy winter snow that blanketed the village each year, beautiful, yet suffocating. In my children's eyes, I saw the future I had longed for, yet also a reflection of the past I could never reclaim. As they grew, I shared with them the values and faith that had guided me, careful to shield them from the heartbreak that shadowed my own youth. And so, the life I built was one of love and loss intertwined, a tapestry woven with threads of joy and regret, strength and vulnerability. It was a life shaped by the choices made under the watchful gaze of tradition and the silent echoes of a love that time could not erase. Through it all, I learned to carry my story with quiet dignity, knowing that some chapters are written not in bold letters, but in the delicate spaces between what is said and what remains forever in the heart. The village changed little in the passing years, its streets still lined with familiar cottages, the same stone walls weathered by countless seasons, and the church standing tall and unyielding as ever, its bell tolling with the steady rhythm of life that never seemed to falter. I, however, was not the same girl who had once dreamed with reckless hope beneath those ancient spires. Time had traced its lines upon my face and greyed my hair, and the bright fire of youth had softened to a quiet ember glowing in the depths of my soul. Father Dominic was long gone, but his shadow lingered still, a weight in the corners of my memories, a presence in the silent prayers I offered when the house grew still at night. I watched my children grow with the tender ache of a mother whose heart was divided between joy and the ghosts of the past. They blossomed into strong, kind people, marrying and building families of their own, their laughter filling rooms that once echoed with the silence of my unspoken grief. The love I had once known, fierce and defiant, had become a faded photograph tucked away in a drawer, cherished and sacred, yet unreachable, like a dream slipping further into the mist with each passing year. I often held that photograph in my hands, tracing the outline of a face that belonged to another lifetime, to a woman who dared to believe in a love that was forbidden. The village was a place of memories and quiet rituals, where faces changed, but the heart of the community remained steadfast, rooted in tradition and the steady march of time. I attended weddings and funerals, baptized grandchildren and shared meals, all while carrying the weight of a story too fragile to speak aloud. The church, once a place of comfort and guidance, sometimes felt like a cage built from stone and expectation, its walls thick with the silence of things left unsaid. In the evenings, I would sit by the window and watch the fading lights spill over the fields, the horizon stretching wide and endless, a reminder of the paths not taken and the futures that might have been. The seasons turned like pages in a well-worn book, each year folding into the next, bringing moments of joy shadowed by quiet sorrow. I learned to live with the stillness that settled in my chest, a companion as constant as the stars that watched over me through countless nights. My faith remained, though tempered by the trials of life and the questions that never found answers. I prayed for strength and forgiveness, not just for myself, but for the love that had been denied and the man I had once held so close. Those prayers were whispered into the darkness, carried on the breath of the wind, and I hoped they reached beyond the confines of the village and the strictures that bound us all. The years were a tapestry of silent moments and unspoken dreams, a testament to endurance in the face of loss. Though the love of my youth was distant and unreachable, it shaped the woman I became, resilient, quiet, and filled with a hope that refused to be extinguished. In the silence of those years, I found a fragile peace, a place where memories could live without pain and the heart could heal, even if the past remained forever out of reach. My grandchildren arrived in my life like bursts of sunshine after a long, cold winter, their laughter filling the quiet corners of my home with warmth and light I had not felt in many years. Each of their bright eyes held a curiosity that rekindled parts of me I believed were lost beneath the weight of decades filled with silence and unspoken longing. Their energy was infectious, like the first tender shoots breaking through thawing earth, promising new beginnings and the soft hope of spring after a harsh season. One afternoon, as we gathered around the worn wooden table, I was sorting through a box of old letters and photographs, relics of a life lived in fragments and memories, when a name caught the sharp attention of one of my grandchildren, Thomas. It was the name I had carried in my heart for so long, spoken only in whispers and guarded moments, a fragile thread connecting me to a past I had locked away. The children looked up at me with gentle, insistent questions, their voices soft but unwavering, like a chorus of tiny hands reaching out for the story I had kept hidden for so long. I felt the weight of years pressing on my chest, the memories flooding back with the force of a tidal wave. days filled with hope and heartbreak, the forbidden love that had shaped the course of my life. Their curiosity was a mirror, reflecting my own youthful hunger for truth and connection, reminding me that stories must be told to live on, passed from one generation to the next, like heirlooms of the soul. As I began to speak, the room grew still. The only sound, the gentle crackle of the fireplace and the soft rustle of paper as I unfolded letters yellowed with age. I told them of a love that had bloomed in the shadow of tradition, a love that had been forbidden by the church and a priest whose word had held the power to shape destinies. I shared the memories of Thomas's gentle smile, the quiet strength in his eyes, and the dreams we had dared to dream beneath the endless sky. The grandchildren listened with wide eyes, their youthful innocence embracing the complexity of a story marked by courage and sacrifice. They asked questions that peeled back the layers of silence I had wrapped around my past, and in their earnestness, I found a safe space to unburden my heart. Their presence was like a healing balm, soothing the wounds I had carried alone for so many years, and their questions were the gentle hands that helped me piece together a story I was finally ready to share. Through their fresh eyes, I began to see the past not as a chain that bound me, but as a tapestry woven with threads of resilience, hope, and enduring love. The spark they ignited within me was a reminder that the heart's stories are never truly lost, only waiting for the right moment and the right voices to bring them back to life. In their laughter and light, I found the courage to believe that even the deepest wounds can begin to heal, and that love, no matter how long deferred, can find its way home again. I hesitated at first, the weight of so many years pressing heavily on my tongue as I gathered the courage to share the story I had carried in silence for decades. A tale of forbidden love, shadowed by the harsh decree of a priest whose word had shaped the course of my life and the dreams I was forced to abandon. The room was filled with the quiet hum of anticipation as my grandchildren looked at me with wide, earnest eyes, their youthful faces open and full of a compassion that surprised me with its depth and sincerity. It was as if their very presence was a gentle balm, breaking through the years of solitude and the walls I had built around my heart. I spoke of Thomas, the young man whose kindness and gentle spirit had ignited a flame within me, a flame that the rigid hands of tradition and authority sought to extinguish. I told them about the village that seemed frozen in time, where the church loomed like a towering fortress over every aspect of life, and about Father Dominic, the man who wielded his power with an unyielding grip, dictating who we could love and what futures were permissible. As I unfolded the memories, the room seemed to grow still, the air thick with the weight of unspoken truths finally given voice. I described the day we dared to announce our intention to marry, only to be met with cold rejection and the cruel decree that tore us apart, like a winter storm ripping leaves from a tree, leaving behind barren branches and a heart stripped of its blossoms. The grandchildren listened, their eyes shimmering with empathy and disbelief, their questions gentle yet insistent, weaving around the fragments of my youth like threads of light seeking to mend a broken tapestry. With each question, the silence that had cocooned my story for so long began to unravel, replaced by a fragile dialogue that bridged the gap between past and present. I showed them the letters I had kept hidden away, letters from Thomas, written in the early days of our separation, filled with hope and longing, their edges worn from years of being held close to my heart. Together, we pieced together the story of a love that had never truly died, a love that survived in whispered memories and the quiet corners of a soul yearning for freedom. The act of sharing was both painful and healing, like the first rays of dawn piercing through the darkness after a long night. I felt the burden of decades lighten, carried away on the wings of their understanding and compassion. Their questions gave shape to the memories. Their voices breathed life into the silence, transforming it from a weight into a bridge. In their eyes, I saw reflections of the young girl I once was, full of hope and defiance, and the woman I had become, tempered by loss but unbroken in spirit. This moment marked the beginning of a new chapter, not just for me but for all of us. A chapter where the past was no longer a shadow to hide from, but a story to honor and learn from. The letters and memories, once locked away, now lived openly among us, a testament to the enduring power of love and the healing that comes from being seen and heard. Through this sharing, I found a renewed sense of hope, knowing that the fragments of my youth, once scattered and forgotten, were now woven into the fabric of my family's story, carrying with them the promise that love, no matter how forbidden, never truly dies. With their eager help, I began the search for Thomas, a journey that stirred a fragile hope within my aging heart, a hope that had lain dormant beneath years of silence and longing. The decades had scattered our paths like autumn leaves caught in the wind, drifting far apart, but never quite losing the memory of where they once fell together. The grandchildren, with their boundless curiosity and mastery of modern tools I barely understood, took to the task with a determination that filled me with both awe and gratitude. They combed through the endless web of the internet, sifting through digital records and archives that revealed fragments of lives lived far beyond the borders of our small village. Local records, whispered stories, and the kind words of strangers pieced together a mosaic of clues, each one a balm to the old wounds that still throbbed quietly beneath my skin. Each discovery felt like a soft rain on parched earth, a gentle reassurance that Thomas was still out there, living, breathing, and perhaps remembering the girl who had once dared to love him. I clung to that thought like a fragile flame in a dark room, a light that flickered but refused to be extinguished. The grandchildren became my eyes and ears in a world so different from the one I had known, their youthful energy breathing life into a quest that felt both urgent and tender. They found records of a man matching his description in towns far from our own, notes of a quiet life spent in simple work and community, just as I had imagined. Each name, each address, each passing mention was a thread that wove a tapestry of hope across the years and miles that separated us. The act of searching was a gift in itself, a bridge between the past and the present, connecting the woman I had become with the girl I once was. I felt the weight of loneliness lessen with every piece of information uncovered, replaced by a quiet anticipation that warmed the chill of years spent apart. Memories that had once brought tears now carried the promise of reunion, the possibility that love deferred might still find its way home. The grandchildren listened intently as I shared stories of Thomas, his gentle hands, his steady gaze, the laughter we shared beneath endless skies, and their eyes shone with a mixture of wonder and determination to help me find him. Their belief in the search rekindled a courage within me I had long forgotten, a courage to hope beyond the shadows of doubt and fear. Sometimes, late at night, I would sit alone with the letters and photographs we had uncovered, tracing the lines of his face and the curls of his handwriting, imagining the life he had lived and the man he had become. The search was more than a quest to find a person. It was a journey to reclaim a part of myself, to honor the love that had shaped my soul despite the barriers that time and circumstance had thrown in our way. Each step brought a mix of joy and apprehension, for with hope came the fear of disappointment. But I held on to the belief that some connections are too strong to be severed by time. As the days passed and the pieces slowly fell into place, I felt a quiet certainty grow within me, a certainty that the story of Thomas and me was not yet finished, that the heart's deepest desires might still be fulfilled. One crisp autumn morning, the kind where the air carries a chill that speaks of change and the leaves rustle like whispered secrets, a letter arrived that trembled in my hands, as if alive with the weight of all the years that had passed. It was from Thomas, written in a hand both familiar and aged, yet holding the same tenderness and longing that had once ignited my youthful heart. 50 years had woven their story into the fabric of our lives, stretching the distance between us like a river winding through time, but his words bridged that gulf with the gentle strength of memory and hope. As I unfolded the fragile paper, the words seemed to pulse with the same quiet passion we had once shared beneath the endless skies of our youth. The letter spoke of days filled with regret and nights haunted by the memory of a love denied but never forgotten. It was an invitation, a fragile thread extended across the decades, asking for a meeting in the village churchyard where so many of our dreams had been shaped and, at times, shattered. The meeting was arranged beneath the watchful gaze of the stone angels carved into the church's ancient walls, silent sentinels who had once seemed to judge us with cold eyes, but now bore witness to the healing of wounds long left open. On the day of the reunion, the village was wrapped in a gentle golden light, the kind that softens the edges of time and lends grace to even the most fragile moments. As I approached the churchyard, my heart beat with a mixture of anticipation and trembling fear, like a bird caught between the urge to take flight and the weight of gravity pulling it down. There he was, Thomas, standing beneath the ancient oak tree that had witnessed our first whispered promises. Time had etched lines of experience on his face, his hair now touched with silver, but his eyes held the same steady kindness that had drawn me to him all those years ago. The distance of half a century seemed to melt away in the warmth of his smile, a beacon that called me home to a place I had never truly left. We spoke in hushed tones, our voices carrying the softness of leaves falling on the earth, sharing the stories of lives lived apart but forever intertwined. There was no bitterness, only a quiet gratitude for the chance to stand together again and for the resilience of a love that had endured despite the harsh winds of time and circumstance. The stone angels watched silently as we walked slowly beneath their gaze, a silent blessing on the reunion that felt both miraculous and inevitable. In that moment, I understood that our story was not one of loss alone, but of enduring hope, a testament to the strength of the human heart, to forgive, to remember, and to heal. The villagers, too, seemed to sense the significance of the day, offering nods of quiet respect rather than judgment, as if time had softened even the most rigid of traditions. As we parted, there was a promise unspoken but deeply felt, a promise that whatever the future held, the past would no longer be a chain to bind us, but a bridge to carry us forward. The reunion was a gentle awakening, a reminder that love, though tested and time-worn, can find its way back to where it belongs, blooming anew beneath the watchful eyes of those stone angels who had seen so much sorrow and now bore witness to the quiet triumph of the heart. The day we met was thick with emotion, the kind that settles deep into your bones and fills the air with a silence so profound it feels almost sacred. Time had etched its lines upon our faces, softening the sharp edges of youth, but leaving behind a tenderness shaped by years of loss and longing. I saw in Thomas's eyes the same gentle light that had once captured my heart, a light tempered now by the trials of decades, yet unwavering in its quiet strength. We spoke in low, measured tones, as though our voices might disturb the fragile peace that had taken so long to find us. Our words wove a tapestry of lost years, silent pain, and enduring love, threads of memory that connected us across the vast chasm of time and circumstance. There was no bitterness in our reunion, no blame for the years that had separated us, only a deep and humble gratitude for the second chance life had graciously offered. It was a gift made possible by the innocence and boundless love of the grandchildren who had become the bridge between our past and our present, their laughter and questions breathing life into a story that had long been held in shadows. As we sat beneath the ancient oak in the churchyard, its leaves whispering softly in the autumn breeze, I felt the weight of years lift from my shoulders, replaced by a lightness I had not known since my youth. The familiar scent of earth and fallen leaves mingled with the distant chime of church bells, marking the passage of a moment that felt suspended in time. We shared memories both joyful and painful, recalling stolen afternoons beneath open skies and nights filled with whispered promises that had once seemed so fragile yet had endured beyond all odds. The ache of separation softened in the warmth of understanding, and the silence between us spoke volumes of forgiveness and acceptance. In his presence, I found a reflection of my own journey, wounds healed not by forgetting, but by embracing the fullness of our shared history. The grandchildren, whose voices had summoned us back to one another, watched nearby with wide eyes and hopeful hearts, their presence a testament to the enduring power of love to transcend time and heal even the deepest scars. The meeting of our souls was a quiet miracle, a gentle reminder that though life may scatter us like leaves in the wind, the roots of love run deep and hold fast. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the churchyard, we made no promises about the days ahead, only the unspoken vow to cherish this moment and the precious gift of reunion. It was a day that transformed the past from a heavy burden into a bridge built of grace and renewed hope, a testament to the resilience of the human heart and the enduring strength found in forgiveness. We parted with the knowledge that while time had changed us, it had not broken the bond forged so many years ago, and that through love's gentle hand, we had found our way back to each other once more. Together, we faced the ghosts of the past, the priest's decree that had ruled our lives like an unbreakable chain, the weight of the church's power that had silenced our voices and dictated the path we were allowed to walk, and the countless sacrifices made in the quiet shadows where pain was hidden from the world. We came to understand that forgiveness was not about forgetting the wounds or erasing the scars, but about freeing ourselves from the prison of bitterness and resentment that had held us captive for so long. It was a difficult and delicate process, like slowly untangling knotted threads of sorrow and betrayal. Yet it was the only path toward peace and healing. I realized that forgiveness was a gift I gave not to those who had hurt me, but to my own weary heart, allowing it to breathe again and find rest after years of torment. In forgiving, we reclaimed the power that had been stolen, transforming our pain into strength and our silence into a voice that could no longer be ignored. Our story, once shrouded in shame and fear, became a testament to resilience, a beacon of hope for anyone who had been silenced or broken by forces beyond their control. We found that faith, once tied to rigid dogma and the harsh judgments of men, was renewed in the gentle embrace of human connection. The understanding, empathy, and love we shared as survivors bound together by a common journey. It was faith not in distant authority, but in the strength we found within ourselves and in each other, a faith that nurtured healing and growth, like sunlight coaxing fragile seedlings from the earth. As we walked this path of forgiveness, I felt a profound lightness settle over me, a lifting of the heavy burden I had carried for so long. The church, once an imposing fortress that had cast a long shadow over my life, began to feel less like a prison and more like a place where healing could begin, not because of the institution itself, but because of the courage we had found to confront its failings and demand truth. Forgiveness opened doors to conversations long avoided, allowing us to speak openly about our experiences, to mourn the losses, and to honor the strength it took to survive. It was in this shared space of vulnerability and courage that we discovered the true meaning of grace, not as an abstract concept preached from pulpits, but as a lived experience born of compassion and understanding. I learned that forgiveness does not erase the past, but it softens its grip on the present and future, giving room for joy and love to flourish once more. Through forgiving, we built bridges where walls had stood, connecting hearts that had been separated by fear and pain. Our story became a living testament to the power of the human spirit to heal and transform, a reminder that even the deepest wounds can give rise to new life when met with courage and kindness. As I look back on that journey, I see how forgiveness allowed me to reclaim my voice and my freedom, to step out from the shadows of my past and into the light of a renewed faith and hope. It taught me that healing is not linear or easy, but it is possible, and that the greatest strength lies in the willingness to forgive, not to forget, but to release the chains that bind us, so we may finally walk forward unburdened and whole. Our grandchildren became the living proof that love transcends the boundaries of time, the walls built by authority, and the silent rules imposed by tradition. Their bright eyes and eager hearts carried forward the story we once feared to tell, weaving it gently yet firmly into the fabric of their own lives, like threads of gold glinting through an old tapestry that had weathered many storms. Through their innocent curiosity and unguarded conversations, the courage and truth that once seemed so fragile began to shine with a quiet strength, casting light into the darkest corners of our past and illuminating a path from pain toward hope. As they shared our story with their friends, their teachers, and sometimes even strangers, the village that had once turned its back on us began to listen. The tale of a forbidden love, silenced for decades by the harsh hand of a priest and the unyielding power of the church, slowly seeped into the consciousness of those who had known only whispers and judgments. With each telling, the narrative shifted. Not just a story of sorrow and loss, but one of resilience and redemption. A reminder that even the most oppressive shadows can be overcome by the steady light of truth. I watched as the villagers, once so quick to cast stones and close their hearts, softened in their understanding, their gazes growing less sharp, their words more gentle. Some came forward with stories of their own pain, long buried beneath layers of silence and shame, finding in our courage a spark to ignite their own voices. It was as though our story had become a seed, planted in the fertile soil of the community's conscience, sprouting shoots of empathy and healing that promised a future different from the past. The village square, once heavy with unspoken judgments, began to hum with quiet conversations about justice and forgiveness, and the church itself became a place where the echoes of old wounds mingled with the prayers for renewal and peace. Our grandchildren, oblivious to the magnitude of what they had begun, continued to live with a fearless honesty that reminded us all of the power inherent in the next generation to change the course of history. They carried the legacy of love not as a burden, but as a gift, a testament to the truth that love, once born, cannot be extinguished by decree or fear. It flows through time like a river, carving its way through stone, persistent and life-giving. I felt a deep and abiding peace settle within me as I saw their faces, bright with hope and untainted by the shadows that had darkened my own youth. In their laughter and light, I found the healing that years of silence had denied me. I understood then that our story was no longer just mine to bear, but belonged to them as a beacon, guiding them to live with courage, to speak their truths boldly, and to carry love with fierce determination. The legacy we leave is not just in the memories of what was lost, but in the living, breathing hope that springs from the choices we make today. Through them, the love that was once forbidden now flourishes openly, free from the chains of the past, a reminder that courage and truth hold the power to overcome even the darkest shadows cast by time and authority. And so, as the seasons turned and the years stretched ahead, I found comfort in knowing that our story would continue, woven into the lives of those who follow, a lasting testament to the resilience of the human heart and the enduring power of love. Now in my 70s, I find myself finally able to tell this story not only for my own healing, but for anyone whose love has ever been silenced by the crushing weight of power or the quiet chains of fear. For so long, I carried my truth like a fragile secret, hidden beneath layers of silence and restraint, believing that to speak it aloud might shatter what little peace I had managed to hold on to. But time has a way of softening even the hardest of hearts, and the courage of my grandchildren, who breathed life into forgotten memories, has given me the strength to raise my voice at last. I have found a peace I once thought impossible, a rekindling of love that transcends the years lost and the barriers imposed by others. The man I loved, Thomas, and the dreams we once shared have become part of the fabric of my present, woven into a tapestry of resilience and hope. I speak now not with bitterness, but with a gentle conviction born of a lifetime of struggle and survival, knowing that silence only serves those who wield power without mercy. If my story touches even one heart, if it gives courage to a soul trembling in the shadows, then the years of quiet are not in vain. Love is a force that cannot be chained or buried, no matter how deeply it is hidden beneath rules and expectations. It always finds a way, like a river carving through rock, persistent and unstoppable, shaping the landscape of our lives in ways both visible and unseen. I want those who hear my words to know that the scars left by forbidden love and unspoken pain can heal when met with truth and compassion. That forgiveness, though difficult, is a path to freedom and renewal. That our voices, long stifled, have the power to break cycles of silence and darkness, lighting the way for others to follow. The journey to this moment has been long and fraught with sorrow, but it has also been marked by moments of profound grace and unexpected joy. I have learned that courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to speak despite it, to claim our stories as our own and share them without shame. My grandchildren, the living bridges between past and future, remind me daily that love's legacy is not measured by the years it endures, but by the strength it inspires in those who carry it forward. I tell my story as a beacon for those lost in the cold night of repression, a reminder that the human heart is capable of boundless strength and infinite hope. To anyone listening, I say, hold fast to your truth, nurture the love that lives quietly within you, and trust that, no matter the obstacles, it will find a way to bloom. Our stories are threads in the vast tapestry of humanity, each one essential, each one deserving to be heard. In sharing mine, I am no longer the silent girl trapped by decree and fear, but a woman who has reclaimed her voice, her love, and her life. And as I stand here today, I feel the warmth of freedom and the promise of new beginnings, knowing that love, in its purest form, will always prevail.